Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am here with a new lecture that is going to be very interesting one. I hope that you all are doing well and enjoying your holidays and your result just announced and you all have you know achieved good grades. So congratulations to all of you. And this lecture that I am going to discuss today is very important one and let's see how it goes. I'm your instructor Asim, as you know that, and your first semester class. Let's see what is our today's topic. So our today's topic is changes in English language during Renaissance. So obviously the first part of this topic, as you can understand easily, but the second part, Renaissance, I guess you are not familiar with it, and I will discuss with you what is Renaissance and and how it developed and how the language has been changed in Renaissance period. So these are the contents that we are going to discuss today. First is abstract and second one is introduction and then history, changes in grammar, changes in pronunciation, changes in spelling, changes in the field of vocabulary, conclusion, and in the end, bibliography. These are our today's contents. So abstract. So we work on the change took place in English during Renaissance. So first of all, I introduce you in front of you what is Renaissance. So the Renaissance introduced the classical learning of Greece and Rome into England. As a result, many Latin words entered the English language as knowledge exploded. Other words were invented to fill gaps in the English language. The printing press invented during the English Renaissance also contribution to the rise and rapid spread of new words. So actually Renaissance is a period in English literature that starts in 1550 to 1660. रेनेसांस एक एज थी, एक दौर था लिटरेचर में, इंग्लिश में, जो कि 1550 से शुरू हुआ और 1660 तक जारी रहा. सो हमारा आज का टॉपिक है कि जो लैंग्वेज है वो किस तरह चेंज हुई उस दौर में, क्या क्या तब्दीलियाँ आई, क्या क्या प्रोनाउंसिएशन में, ग्रामर में, लैंग्वेज में, वर्ड्स में तब्दीलियाँ आई. तो उस दौर में जो तब्दीलियाँ आई वो हम आज डिस्कस करेंगे और आपको पता चल गया रेनेसांस क्या है. एक्चुअली इट इज़ अ पीरियड इन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर that starts in 1550 to 1660. So get help from your textbook and some another books and internet sources to prepare this presentation. So in Renaissance, English language took changes mainly in pronunciation, grammar, spelling and in the field of vocabulary. सो रेनेसांस पीरियड में क्या क्या चेंजेस आई लैंग्वेज में. एक तो प्रोनाउंसिएशन की तब्दीली आई, ग्रामर में तब्दीली आई, स्पेलिंग में तब्दीली आई और उसके बाद वोकैबुलरी में तब्दीली आई. सो you will see that changes on your next slides. So the English language has been gradually departing from its original Teutonic character and reached the modern status. तो कहते हैं इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में तब्दीलियाँ आहिस्ता आहिस्ता आती रही हैं और अपने एक मदार से वो हटके और आज मौजूदा दौर तक वो ये ज़बान पहुंची है. Introduction. First of all, the English language is the richest language of the world. It is accepted as the international language. As you know that it is an international language and richest language in the world, and it is accepted as the international language. You know that. You know the importance and key aspects of English language. So that's why we are here to study English language actually. And as you all know that मैं आपको बता चुका Renaissance क्या था. Further, I perceive in detail it a little bit more. The English Renaissance began in the late 15th century, but it's primarily identified with the 16th and early 17th centuries. The period of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I and William Shakespeare. सो इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में जो रेनेसेंस थी वो बेसिकली शुरू तो 15th सेंचुरी में हुई, फिर उसको पहचान मिली 16वीं सदी और 17वीं सदी में. और ये दौर था किसका? हेनरी किंग था, उसके बाद एलिजाबेथ वन थी और उसके बाद विलियम शेक्सपियर. ये उस दौर के थे. बिकॉज द लार्ज नंबर ऑफ क्लासिकल टेक्स्ट एंड आइडियाज वर बीइंग ट्रांसलेटेड इनटू इंग्लिश ड्यूरिंग दिस period, helped by much by the rise of our printing press. And new words entered the language in droves. Some words were simply imported as is from other language, and while some were invented to describe concepts that had no words yet in English, today's word is in a similar shift due to the rise of the internet and related things because of the new focus on the classical word. So let's see what is our next slide. The next, language is not static. It got changes with the passing time. Changes constantly going on in every age. English got the modern stage by changing and developing its origin. So लैंग्वेज जो है वो एक जगह ठहरी नहीं रही, उसमें तब्दीलियाँ आती रही हैं वक्त के साथ साथ, और हर दौर में तब्दीलियाँ आती रही और तब्दीलियाँ आके वो इस स्टेज में आके पहुँची है. By origin of obviously we have discussed that already in previous lectures. Origin of language, the topic named, and English includes in the family of Indo-European languages. And let's see a little bit more about those people. Shakespeare is famous for inventing hybridized words to fill gaps in the language, such as barefoot, but other writers such as Ben Jonson did so as well. Other words such as the latent dexterity and ingenious like that, and were coined by writers and scholars who wanted to emphasize their prestige by their link to classical learning. And as mentioned before, the printing press helped to standardize the language, uniting various dialects and rapidly introducing new words. Periods of ferment and change tend to early language, and by the end of the English Renaissance, the groundwork for modern English usually identified as starting around 1700 were laid. So let's discuss the changes in language that took place in Renaissance period. During Renaissance, English language get many changes into its grammar, pronunciation, spelling, and vocabulary, as I have told you earlier. And these are the changes that we have discussed in the next slide. And further, I want to discuss a little bit more about Shakespeare with you. And Shakespeare includes the winning school boy with his Satchel as the second of his 7 ages of humanity. We tend to forget that there were Shakespeare as for Duvalier, Lope, De Vega, Milton, Camus, Curfew, Kirpur, ये कैरेक्टर थे उस दौर में. उसके बाद हम देखेंगे कि कॉमन प्लेसेस थी लैंग्वेज में रेनेसेंस के दौर में. वाइडली स्पोकन थी अंग्रेजी, read and written across Europe and beyond. In the defining characteristics of what has variously been called a world language, and a universal language are its number of non-native speakers and its international circulation. By the time Erasmus was written his colloquial and Shakespeare his comedies, Latin has been the paradigmatic word language for well over a millennium. So, through the army and administrative framework of the Roman Empire, Latin spread throughout Europe, prompting Pliny, an elder of the natural history, as praise patriotically Rome's ability and draw together to discount trend. So here are the slides that will show some changes. So Renaissance period give the existence of modern grammar. It helps in the development of synonyms and the use of classical derivation to correspond to the native noun. Example: kind, then kindly, hand, manual, nasal, nosy. These are some of the changes. Pronunciation में भी actually changes आई. Further I कुछ और बताना चाहूँगा थोड़ा. So while Latin has always been a linguistic and cultural force in the history of the West, उस दौर में लैटिन जो थी वो बड़ी रिच लैंग्वेज समझी जाती थी और कई सालों से वही बोली आ रही. It spread in the early modern period, reached in our time that thanks to new educational dynamics and the invention of movable type around 1450, statistically forcefully demonstrate the language's power and growth. About 95% of all the extant language text and date from the Renaissance onwards. Basically, Renaissance, that word means rebirth. Rebirth of knowledge, rebirth of language, rebirth of religion, rebirth of poetry, drama, and everything. That means rebirth. So changes in pronunciation. The letter A was pronounced before the consonants K, H, and T as long A. Example: bath, father, rather, ask, task, ask, master, craft, etc. For the long pronunciation of A, the sound of O is silent in the words like palm, half, calf, calm, etc. तो वो ये कहना चाह रहा है इसमें कि ए को लॉन्ग प्रोनाउंस किया जाता था. तो जब ए को लॉन्ग प्रोनाउंस किया जाता था तो एल जो था ऐसे लफ्ज़ों में जिसमें यूज़ हो रहा था राइट आफ्टर ए, तो फिर वो साइलेंट हो जाता था, वो एल को पढ़ा नहीं जाता था. जैसे कि पाम, half, calf, calm, etc. These are the pronunciation changes. Next, the pronunciation of word A become A in some words. Example: cake, ale, dame, fame, etc. So, orthographically, the Middle English long vowel E was represented by E, A, A. For example, feet, seek, deep, heat, seat, cat, field, believe. So जब ई साउंड था तो उसको ए लॉन्ग में पढ़ा जाता था. जैसे एग्जाम्पल नीचे दिए गए हैं: फीट, सीक, डीप. आप इनको प्रोनाउंस करेंगे तो फर्दर आप इनको बेहतर तौर पर समझ पाएंगे. सो लैंग्वेज जो है एक्टिव लैंग्वेज ही अर्ली मॉडर्न पीरियड में हैज़ बीन द सेंटर ऑफ द नंबर ऑफ रीसेंट स्टडीज एंड दिस डिबेट इज likely to continue. So Peter Brook characterizes Latin as a language in search of community and suggests that the search ultimately succeeded because of its cohesive value for the Catholic Church and the Republic of Letters, and sees Latin's fall from the mid-17th centuries onwards as accelerated by what he calls print capitalism and as a part of a larger process of nation. A building which fragmented, pluralized, and territorialized community is formally integrated and by the old sacred languages. So Menai Mezumura was a person who considered how adoption of a universal language like English in the modern world can erode local and national consciousness. So these are the language parameters. Let's see what is next slide. By the end of the 16th century, the Long had completed the process of diphthongization to a example fire, right, light, life, blind, etc. The Middle English long U had become the diphthong U. तो वो कहता मिडिल इंग्लिश में जब लॉन्ग यू को प्रोनाउंस किया जाता है तो यू बन गया, वो डिप्थोंग बन गया. डिप्थोंग मतलब वर्ड शिफ्ट हो जाता है टुवर्ड्स, ग्लाइड कर जाता है. एग्जाम्पल हाउस, माउस, काउ. तो इसमें ए यू का साउंड दिया जा रहा है. नेक्स्ट एग्जाम्पल में अब आप देखेंगे. And the next is further I would like to discuss something with you. In the tradition of literature remarkable for its exacting and brilliant achievement, the Elizabethan and early Stuart periods have been said to represent the most brilliant century of all. The reign of Elizabeth I began in 1558 and ended with her death in 1603. She was succeeded by the Stuart King James VI of Scotland, who took the title James of England as well. English literature and its reign as James and the from 1603 to 1625 is properly called Jacobean Age. So here graphical representation, how that words and pronunciation changes. Step 1, A and U drop and become A. And step 2, E and O move up becoming A, I and U. And step 3, A moves forward to A. And step 4, E becomes A, becomes O, and A moves up to E, and step 6, E moves up to I, and the new E was created in step 4. Now that E moves up to I, step 7, E moves up to E. So the new E created in step 5 now moves up, and number 8, E and A drop to I and A. These are the graphical changes and these are the 8 steps that then shows the change in the language during the Renaissance. Before moving to spelling change, I'll discuss a few things more about the Renaissance period. Gallery of author and genius, some of whom have never been surpassed, and conferred on scores of lesser talents and invariable ability to write with fluency, imagination, and verb. From one point of view, this sudden Renaissance looks radiant, confident, heroic, and related, but all the more dazzling for its belatedness. Yet, from another point of view, this was a time of unusually traumatic strain in which English society underwent massive disruption which transformed every front in a decisive, effective way. It on every front in a decisive, effective way the life of every individual. In the brief, intense moment in which England assimilated the European Renaissance and the circumstances that made the assimilation possible while already disintegrating and calling into question the newly won certainties and well as well as the older truths that they were dislodging. This doubleness of the possibilities and new dots seamlessly apparently gives the literature unrivaled intensity. So here, this the spelling changes. It is one of the remarkable result in Renaissance. तो जबरदस्त नतीजा था ये Renaissance का. Example of some words like before Renaissance, that was date and doubt was the indict mean indict and Koi is cure and faulty becomes fault. Here is the spelling changes in that period. And before moving on to the next slide, I will discuss with you what was the social condition in the Renaissance period. In this period, English population doubled, prices rocketed, trends followed, old social loyalties dissolved, and new industrial, agricultural, and commercial veins were first tapped. Real wages hit an all-time low in the 1620s, and the social relations were plunged into a state and fluidity from the which the merchant and the ambitious leisure gentleman profited and expanded. The aristocrat and the liberal studies of the community current from the 1590s complained behind the Elizabethan age of pastoral period. Here is the growth of vocabulary during the English Renaissance, 1500 to 1650. Some 10,000 to 12,000 words entered the English lexicon, including lexicon. Example: aberration, allusion, anachronism, democratic, dexterity, enthusiasm, imagery, juvenile, pernicious, sophisticated. Many of these words were borrowed directly from Latin, both in its classical and medieval forms. In turn, late Latin also included borrowing from Greek. So उस दौर में तकरीबन 1500 से 1650 में तकरीबन 10 से 12,000 वर्ड जो थे वो इंग्लिश में आए, जो इसकी एग्जांपल भी मैंने दी है. In the middle of your Spain, and these words have been borrowed from the Latin language. Later these words come from the Greek language. These were the rich languages of that time. There was some intellectual and religious revolution in that time, paralyzed to and the barely discussed social ferment was accompanied by the intellectual revolution as the medieval scientists collapsed before the new science, new religion, new humanism, while modern mechanical technologies were pressed into service by the sea would create the scenic wonders of the court mosque. The discoveries of astronomers and the explorers were being made, and you see you have discussed the I've discussed the growth of vocabulary as well. There are some race and cultural development as well in the during the Renaissance period. Let's see on the next slide, graphical representation. Here on the next, in that way you can examine in 1500, 500 to 1000, 1500, these are the years, and in 1501 to 1525. These are the words that have been borrowed from different languages, and the white color represents Latin and black color represents French. So In 1501 to 1525, the equal number of words have been borrowed from these languages. In 1526 to 1550, more Latin words have been included than the French, and 1551 to 1575, more Latin words have been borrowed. In 1576 to 1600, obviously Latin was a rich language at that time, though more words came from the Latin language. In 1601 to 1625, obviously more than 4,000 words from the Latin and 2,000 from the French language. In 1626 to 1650, maybe 2,500 words from the Latin and 1,000 words from French. And in 1651 to 1675, almost 4,000 words from Latin and 1,000 words from French. And 1676 to 1700, almost 1,500 words from Latin and 1,000 words from French have been added in the English language. These are the graphical representation, these are the changes that I have told you that we are going to study today, and these are the spelling and the changes that we have experienced now. And this is the conclusion. The vast impact of Renaissance carried out a flood of new thoughts and knowledge. It helps in artificiality and made a distinction between literary and spoken English. So these are the changes that have been made in the Renaissance period, and hopefully you have discussed and you have learned all these things very well. Thank you very much for your cooperation.